Hi, my name is Bastian Kordyaka. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Bremen in Germany. On behalf of my co-authors Samuli Laato, Sebastian Juho Hamari, and Bjoern Niehaves, I am happy to present our work, exploring the association between engagement with location-based game features and getting inspired about environmental issues in nature. As most of us know, and all of us can see, our world has changed significantly in the last few decades. On the one hand, this is certainly pleasing to a large extent with regard to digitalization, but unfortunately, it also has a downside as climate change, for example, shows. The Earth's temperature has risen by around 2 degrees since 1850, with an average increase of 0.1 degrees per decade. Since 1982, however, this rate has tripled to around 0.36 degrees per decade, and there is no end in sight to this trend. Another area where changes can be observed is environmental toxins. It is estimated that up to 8.3 million people worldwide die every year as a result of exposure to toxic air, water, soil, and chemicals. Another notable area is that of species extinction, where it is assumed that human activity has drastically increased the number of extinct animals to between 100 and 1,000, primarily due to habitat loss. As a consequence, and in response to humans' diametric impact on nature, an appropriate approach to the environment and resources is crucial for the security and prosperity of future generations. This is where the motivation for our paper comes in. As one of the possible answers to the challenges described above, scientists in the field of human-computer interaction, HCI, have for some time been researching digital solutions under the term green or sustainable HCI, which encourage responsible environmental behavior and recognize the personal responsibility of the individual. Previous HCI work has already shown that so-called location-based games, the best known in this context is undoubtedly Pokémon GO, can connect players with nature. For those unfamiliar with the term, I recommend reading our article, whereby in location-based games, movement is linked to movement. Players navigate to specific locations in the real world with the assistance of their cell phone to access game content, blurring the boundaries between the digital and physical worlds, and allowing players to interact with each other in novel ways. Experiences with nature are conveyed in location-based games through the game's dynamics. To this day, however, there is still uncertainty about the specific effects of location-based games on the environmental awareness of players, or whether there are any at all. To make our empirical insights connectable, we used a validated theoretical framework, consisting of the 3 building blocks: A. Gamification, to conceptualize the game design of a location-based game and possibilities to make influences of concrete design features visible. B. Inspiration, which describes a motivational state in relation to an object consisting of the 2 dimensions inspired by and inspired to that has so far only been sporadically observed in the HCI world. And C. The environmental awareness of the players as a relevant dependent variable. Based on the explanations in the previous slides, we have formulated the following research question. What are the relationships between gamification, inspiration, and environmental awareness in the context of Pokémon GO? To answer our research question, we proposed a mixed methods study with a sequential quantitative design with 2 consecutive studies, where in Study 1 we identified relevant gamification features in a 3-step approach in the context of Pokémon GO in a data-driven manner. Subsequently, we first test the influence of the relevant gamification features identified in Study 1 on the dimension inspired by, and then, drawing on existing literature in neighboring contexts, test relationships of previously specified hypotheses between the 2 dimensions of inspiration, inspired by and inspired to, with regard to environmental awareness. We followed a 3-step approach for the data analysis and procedure of our Study 1, combining literature review and assessments of experienced gamers, which I will briefly discuss below. In Step 1, we searched the literature for a study that contained a large portfolio of gamification features. In Step 2, we used the identified portfolio of gamification features and assessed whether the feature was present in the game or not. In Step 3, we used the shortened list and assessed the relevance of the remaining list of gamification features. In the following, I will describe the data collection and the participants of the two empirical steps, 2 and 3, of our study 1. In Step 2, we interviewed 3 participants between the ages of 31 and 41 who stated that they had been playing Pokémon GO since the game's release in 2016. For Step 3, we interviewed 2 participants who were 31 and 34 years old, respectively, and stated that they started playing in 2016 and 2017. On this slide, we can see the concrete results of our Study 1 consisting of the 3 steps. Step 1, finding a gamification feature portfolio. Here, we identified a review study by Koivisto and Hamari that identified a total of 46 gamification features. Step 2, available gamification features. Based on our first empirical iteration, the list was reduced by 16 features to 30 features. Step 3, relevant gamification features. Based on our second empirical iteration, the list was reduced by 15 features to 15 features. The list of 15 features ultimately included relevant gamification features, points, score, XP, e.g. number of Pokémon caught, badges, achievements, medals, trophies, e.g. medals, Pokédex completion, levels, e.g. your trainer level and the level of your Pokémon, social network functions, e.g. legendary raids in a team, competition, e.g. PvP battles, multiplayer, e.g. trading with friends, avatar, character, virtual identity, e.g. your avatar and your virtual identity, narrative, narration, storytelling, dialogues, theme, e.g. the Pokémon world, roleplay, e.g. role-playing as a Pokémon trainer, check-ins, location data, e.g. leaving Pokémon at gyms, motion tracking, e.g. completing routes and placing lure modules, virtual currency, e.g. having Pokécoins, reminders, cues, notifications, e.g. inventory management, virtual pets, e.g. having cute and strong Pokémons, virtual objects as augmented reality, e.g. using AR features. Okay, now let's move on to our Study 2 and the methodology used there. With regard to the data analysis and approach, we conducted a cross-sectional survey to collect self-reports from Pokémon GO players using an online questionnaire, and covariance-based statistics, such as regression analyses. Specifically, we proceeded in 2 successive sequential steps. Step 1, exploring the exploratory potential of gamification features, and Step 2, testing postulated relationships, mediation analysis. Regarding the data collection and participants of our Study 2, we used a digital questionnaire to collect data from 311 Pokémon GO players via the crowdsourcing marketplace Prolific. Participants were paid USD 1.60 each to participate in our survey. On the levels of characteristics, 56% of participants identified as male and 43% as female. 43% of participants were between 23 and 28 years old. 75% had at least a bachelor's degree. 53% were American, and 42% reported playing the game between 2 and 3 days per week. With regard to the measurement tools used, we used validated tools from previous research. Specifically, to operationalize gamification, we used the list of 15 relevant gamification features identified in the study and asked participants, please rate the importance of interacting with the gamification feature. The 2 dimensions inspired by I discovered something new, and inspired to I felt the desire to go outside were measured with 5 items each. Finally, environmental awareness was measured with 3 items, We are approaching the limit of the number of people the Earth can support. All indicators showed acceptable values. Let us now turn to the results of our study 2. The regression equation in relation to the explorative potential of gamification features and the dependent variable inspired by showed a highly significant result and explained a total of 32% of the dependent variable inspired by. Specifically, the following 3 regression weights showed significant positive influences: social network features, reminders, virtual objects in relation to the dependent variable inspired by. After the first part of the analyses of our study 2, we devoted ourselves in a subsequent step to testing postulated relationships within the framework of a mediation analysis, in which we postulated inspired to as a mediator of the relationship between inspired by and environmental awareness. Results indicated a partial mediation, with all 3 pathways showing positive associations and explaining 9% in the dependent variable, environmental awareness. Let us now turn to the key takeaways from our study. First, in study 1, we identified 15 gamification features in Pokémon GO, aiding in designing playful technologies to trigger desired player states. Second, study 2 showed that A. Social networking features, B. Reminders, and C. Virtual objects as key gamification features positively influencing players inspired by. Additionally, study 2 indicated a partial mediation of inspired to outdoor engagement, linking inspiration by playing Pokémon GO to increased environmental awareness. In summary, the mixed methods study suggests that Pokémon GO has the potential to positively influence players' environmental awareness, as initially assumed. With our study, we contributed to sustainable HCI research, offering practical and theoretical insights for game design in promoting environmental consciousness. Thank you for watching to the end.